Okay, good morning, everybody. I know you just got comfortable, but I want you to stand back to your feet, okay? We're starting a new series today, and so you picked a great Sunday to come, and we're going to be talking about the subject of responsibility, and we'll be talking about this for the next 4 Sundays. So be responsible. Don't miss the next 4 Sundays, okay? So this is what I want you to do, okay? You got to get your heart ready for the message, and the worship team helps us do that, but also you help do that by being prepared for the message. And so this is what I want you to do, okay? I want you to find somebody that's close to you that you really don't know that well, and ask them this question: are you responsible? Okay? Find somebody you don't know real quick and say, hey, are you responsible? Quickly could do this, okay? And find out you can find somebody responsible, okay? Hey, Ryan, are you responsible? Yeah. Yes. Hey, let me ask another question, okay? Did anybody find somebody who said, no, I'm not responsible? All right, right up here. John Pierce said he is not responsible, okay? So we have an irresponsible person here this morning, and so disregard that guy over there. I don't know who he is, why he's here, and thank you. Please be seated, and welcome today. What a great day to serve the Lord, man. The weather is beautiful, right? Finally got some good weather. Finally, man, I had my shots for allergies. I've been taking them now for about 2 months. And this is the first spring that I can remember where I'm not all clogged up, right? And my eyes aren't all puffy. And so great, man. It's good. Don't you thank the Lord for allergy shots? And so God is good. Hey, we're talking about this thing about being responsible. You say, why should I worry about all this stuff? You know, why should I be a responsible person? And so I want you to get the big idea this morning. You are responsible, okay? So be responsible. In other words, you will be held accountable one day, okay, for what you do here on this earth. So why not be responsible? That's the whole premise of this series that we'll be doing for the next 4 weeks. And I want to share some things with you by way of introduction to kind of help set the stage for what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the blame game, all right? You ever played a blame game? And we're going to talk about what the blame game is and how it looks and how so many people are eager to play the blame game. But before we do that, I want to share some things with you that you may or may not already know in regards to where our culture is, okay? Did you know that 40%, that's 4 out of 10 children that are born today, in the year 2013, are born to a mom who is not married? 40%, okay? Back in 1950, for example, it was about 4%. So we've seen a huge increase in this matter of people having babies without being married. If you look at where the United States is, okay, in 2000, the year 2000, we had 17 million people receiving food stamps. In 2011, it's 44 million people receiving food stamps. Our national debt in 2000 was around $5.5 trillion. Today, it is at $17 trillion. Now, to kind of get this into your mind, okay, if every taxpayer, in order to pay that big of a debt off, every taxpayer would have to contribute $194,000. But it's even worse than that. 47% of those who are working pay absolutely no income tax. So that number goes up to more like $400,000 that the paying taxpayers would have to pay in order to retire that humongous debt. Unbelievable. Did you realize that 20% of the taxpayers are paying 80% of the money going into the Internal Revenue Service? So when you think about these things are astounding. How did our culture become so irresponsible? And we do the blame game, right? So here's the first point that I want you to fill out in your little outline. Number one, our culture is becoming more irresponsible. And so what is happening is that is leaking over into all facets of our lives because we reflect the culture. And so as you look at the culture that is changing, I have a picture that I want to show you up here. Here's a picture of a church. I have a friend of mine. His name is Russ. Russ lives up in Delaware, and Russ and I have a kindred spirit in that we want to help inmates to get past their addiction, right? And we want them to be, contributing to society. We want them not to go back to prison. And so Russ has a son who's incarcerated down in North Carolina. He lives in Delaware, and it broke his heart that his son made some really foolish decisions, some irresponsible things. And so Russ has started an organization through his church that he pastors up in Delaware, and he provides lessons so that these guys who are incarcerated can better themselves, they can get an education, they get an associate's degree through the correspondence program that he has set up. So Russ is out visiting some family, and he's out there, and he notices this church, okay? But it's no longer a church. This church is now called the 7th Street Casino. And as you look at this, get the address of this church, okay? It's on 777 North 7th Street in Kansas City. All right, so back in the 40s, this church was a thriving congregation, reaching the lost, doing great things. But through time, all right, the city of Kansas City hasn't gotten smaller, right? It's gotten larger. But something happened within the congregation where they started to become a little bit irresponsible, and the numbers began to dwindle, and everybody said, well, it's not my problem. And so that they ended up selling the church building to this casino. As you look at this, something strange has happened in our culture. In July of 2011, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article, and it talked about from 2008 to 2011, over 200 churches went bankrupt. And they said what really puzzled them is that this is a new phenomenon within American society. They looked at the 10 years prior to 2008 and found only 2 or 3 churches in that decade, right, that fell into bankruptcy. They went even way back to the times of the Great Depression. You would think the Great Depression, but they discovered that churches thrived during the Great Depression. This church that is a picture up on the screen was a church that was a post-Great Depression church. Came out of that rumble and all of that disaster. What happened? Back then, our culture was more responsible. And so as we look at culture, it's not only affecting the church, not only affecting the government, but even the entertainment that our kids and adults listen to. Many of you may or may not know who Eminem is, right? He's a rapper. Not quite as popular as he was a couple years ago, but still fairly popular. This is what Eminem said. I'd be stupid to sit here and to say that there aren't kids who are looking up to me. But that's not my responsibility. I'm not a babysitter. Wow. Doesn't that reek of irresponsibility? Not taking responsibility for their actions. Here's the second thing about irresponsibility. Irresponsibility is contagious. You can catch it. I've got some good news on the other end of that. Although irresponsibility is contagious, so isn't responsibility. And so here I want to challenge you this morning to be response-able, okay? Be able to respond. That's why we ought to be response-able. But realize that if you're hanging around some really irresponsible people who refuse to take, ownership of their issues, then they will contaminate you. They will drag you down. Eleanor Roosevelt said this: freedom makes a huge requirement of every human being. With freedom comes responsibility. For the person who is unwilling to grow up, the person who does not want to carry his own weight, this is a frightening prospect for a nation and a culture. Eleanor Roosevelt. Luke chapter 16 in verse number 10, Jesus said these words, "One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much." We're living in a, well, that's just a little thing. It doesn't really matter. Jesus said, the one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in very much. It's contagious. If you're living your life being dishonest in the little things in your life, it's going to impact the bigger things in life. I didn't say that. Jesus said that. Well, here's the third thing about irresponsibility. When I'm irresponsible, someone else takes up my responsibility, and this creates conflict. You wonder why there's conflict in your life? This is one of the reasons there is conflict. Let's look at the key text and see, well, why did this all happen? Where is the root of all this conflict and lack of responsibility? Genesis chapter 1. Take it way back to the beginning. So God created human beings. God never made a mistake, but I wonder why he made us with a free choice. He's perfect. And he knew when he made us, even though we were created in his own image, in the image of God he created us, male and female he created us, God blessed them. And he said, now before we go any further, as we look at what God is giving them, he's giving them a heavy dose of responsibility before he is giving them any rules. And so look what he does. He says, be fruitful and multiply. What does that mean? Adam and Eve, go have fun and have babies. All right? Now, this is the second time this is repeated. First, it was repeated to the animal creation, right? Here, Adam and Eve are commanded also to fill the earth and subdue it. All right? That's your responsibility, to subdue it. Your job is to be manager of the earth. You will rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, the responsibility is continuing. The rule hasn't got here yet. Just heavy responsibility. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole world, earth, and every tree that has fruit and seed in it, this will be yours for food. Okay? Heavy doses of responsibility. You are to rule the earth. And in exchange for that heavy-duty responsibility, I will ensure that your seeds will grow, your fruits will produce, and that you will have plenty to eat. You know, as much as we like to fantasize about the carefree life, the truth is, those who are happiest are those who are most responsible. It gives you that sense of empowerment. And so God says, here, Adam and Eve, heavy doses of responsibility. I am a responsible God. You are created in my image. I'm expecting you to have this heavy-duty responsibility. By the way, grace requires accountability. And so God says, I'll tell you what, one rule, just one. Because grace requires accountability. You just have one rule, okay, Adam and Eve? You can do anything you want, except, you got heavy-duty responsibility. You got things taken care of for you. The only thing you can't do, okay, is you can't partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's a little test, okay, because grace always requires accountability. We just came through our grace series and we learned about the accountability factor that comes with living a grace-filled life. One rule, they broke it. So I'm going to give you 4 principles this morning about responsibility. Number 1 is we were created to be responsible. That's how God created us. He didn't create us to be irresponsible. He says, subdue the earth, tend the earth, name the animals, okay? A responsible person always finds a way to do what they're responsible to do. Irresponsibility, on the other hand, always finds excuses. Winston Churchill said this: the price of greatness is always responsibility. This verse is not in your notes, but I want to read it to you. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Paul is addressing the Thessalonians, and apparently this issue of irresponsibility that goes all the way back to Adam is woven throughout human history. And so Paul says, we hear that there are some among you, 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 11, who walk in idleness, okay? They're not being responsible. They're not busy at work, but they're busy doing something. They're busy bodies is what he says they are. He says, now such persons we command, okay, they're not taking responsibility. You do not live in a vacuum. When you're being irresponsible, it's not that you're just being irresponsible. You're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. That's why you're irresponsible in this other area of your life. And he says, such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work quietly, to earn their own living. In other words, get out of the business of everybody else and take care of your own responsibility. As for you, brothers, for those of you who are responsible, do not grow weary in doing good. And then he continues, back to the theme of the irresponsible one. If anyone does not obey what we say in this letter, take note of that person and have nothing to do with them, that they may be ashamed. Why? Because irresponsibility is contagious, right? Do not regard them as an enemy, but warn them as a brother. Okay, so we were created to be responsible in all areas of our lives. So the areas of our lives that we are irresponsible, our natural reaction is to do the blame game. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Here's the second principle. As responsibility increases in my life, the need for regulation decreases. There's an interesting verse where Paul says, if I judge myself, I will be under the judgment of nobody. But what is that saying? He's saying if I take personal responsibility for myself and I do what I'm supposed to do, I'm able to respond and I don't have to be judged by anybody. The regulations decrease in my life. Let's go back to Adam and Eve, okay? Let's see how they responded, right? When they were irresponsible and partook of the fruit. Genesis chapter 3, verse number 8. We fast forward the story a little bit. We discover that they messed up. Adam and Eve both partake of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The one rule that they were not supposed to break, they break. The man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And so what do? They hide. The first thing we do as irresponsible people is we hide. Right? I hope the boss doesn't see this. I'm hiding. I'm going to keep it low. They hid from the Lord like you can hide from God. They hid from the Lord among the trees of the garden. But the Lord called to the man and said, where are you? Wait a minute. God doesn't know that Adam is lost? No. Adam doesn't know that he is lost. And so God is calling out to him, keeping him accountable for his irresponsibility. He answered. Adam answered, I heard you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid. Man, you ought to be responsible so you don't have to hide. You know, whenever you get in that deception line of your life, when you start doing things secretively, there's an area of your life that you're being irresponsible in. That's why you got to hide something. So, man, I was afraid. I heard you in the garden. I was naked, so I hid. Hey, who told you that you were naked? your irresponsibility and disobedience. Have you eaten from the tree that I have commanded you not to eat? So the man said, the good man that he is, right? The macho man that he is. It's that woman that you put here with me. It's her fault. She gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. Oh, okay. So the Lord said to the woman, what is this that you have done? And so the woman said, it's that serpent that you gave to me that deceived me. And now, isn't it amazing as you look at Adam, all of a sudden he has a lot to say when it comes to the blame game. I'll tell you what happened. Everything was cool until you gave me that woman. All right, everything was. Adam and Eve were together when Eve partook of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They were not separate, okay? Adam wasn't over the other side of the Garden of Eden. He was right there. When he should have spoke up, he was irresponsible and he shut his mouth. It should have been Adam having the conversation with the serpent. But he was Mr. Casper Milk Toast. Oh, I don't deal with stuff like that, okay? Sin enters the picture because he's irresponsible, she's deceived, and all of a sudden, the blame game begins. It's her fault. It's the serpent's fault. Here's the third principle. Irresponsibility creates conflict. Let's fast forward even a little more in the story to Genesis chapter 4. I don't think this is in your notes, but this is interesting how irresponsibility is passed on. The sin nature is passed on. Cain and Abel, verse number 1. Cain and Abel are born. Adam and Eve have a child together, and they give birth to Cain. Eve says, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. And later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Abel was a keeper of flocks, and Cain worked the soil. Nothing wrong with that. Responsible boys. One is working the soil as a farmer. One is a tender of livestock. Verse number 3, in the course of time, Cain brought some fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. Now this is an act of irresponsibility because when Adam and Eve fell into sin, they're hiding. God kills an animal sacrifice and lays out for them, okay, this is what I want, all right? A perfect animal sacrifice. It's not like he didn't know, all right? Cain brings that fruit. Abel also brings in an offering. Abel got it right. Fat portions from some of the firstborn of the stock. And so the Lord looks on favor with Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look at with favor. Okay. So Cain repents, takes responsibility for his actions, and they live happily ever after. That's not the way it went. That's how we wish it would go, right? If Cain was responsible, he would have done that. But Cain instead gets very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord comes, okay, he's coming to him again, okay? Second opportunity, Cain, to get this right. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? But if you do not what is right, get that look. Sin is crouching. Sin is right around the corner. The enemy is waiting, saying, listen, Cain, don't take responsibility for that. The master deceiver has now gotten Cain to live in deception. It desires to have you. Satan desires to have you. Sin is crouching at the door, but you must rule over it. Cain decides to be sneaky instead of repenting. Who is God to tell me what I should or should not do? He gets mad at God and takes it out on one of God's servants. Look at the rest of the story. Verse number 8. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, hey, we're all cool, man. Let's go out in the field. While they're there in the field, Cain attacks his brother Abel and he kills him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where's your brother? I don't know. He lies. Here comes the excuse. Am I my brother's keeper? What are you asking me where he is? The Lord said, what have you done? It's not that God didn't know what had happened. God asks us questions all the time, not because he's trying to figure out what happened, not because he's trying to sort out the details, because he wants us to take responsibility. He says, okay, what has happened? And sometimes when we preach to ourselves, we see what has happened. But when we talk to ourselves, we're living that excuse, the blame game. What has happened? Listen, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. Now you're under a curse and you're driven from the ground, and it opened up your mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield crops. Get this next little phrase. You will be restless because of your irresponsibility. You will constantly wander. Rest only comes to those who take responsibility. Irresponsible people will try to keep things stirred up because they refuse to deal with them. And they will keep things moving, and they'll find a reason to keep things stirred. Here we discover Cain is going to be a wanderer the rest of his life because he refuses to take responsibility. Cain says, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you drive me from the land, and whoever finds me will kill me. Verse number 15, and the Lord said to him, no, not so. Anyone who kills Cain, Cain, you're irresponsible, but God is not. Whoever kills you, Cain, vengeance will follow on them 7 times over. Then the Lord put a mark on Cain. God had to mark Cain because he was irresponsible. He puts his mark on Cain so that nobody who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence, and he lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And then we hear nothing else about Cain. Nothing else about Cain. We don't know how he died. We don't know what happened to him. Yeah, obviously he had kids, and obviously stuff happened. But that's the last we hear about Cain. Every time you intentionally or unintentionally shirk responsibility, you create conflict somewhere with someone. A man who lacks reliability is utterly useless. Proverbs 25:15 says this: putting confidence in an unreliable person in times of trouble is like chewing on a broken tooth. You ever have a tooth that has a broken part and and the nerve is exposed and you bite into something and it's like, ooh, man, that hurts. Or it is like walking on a lame foot. You ever have a bum ankle? It's like, oh man, can't run like I used to. I can barely walk. Romans chapter 16 says this: I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teachings that you have learned. Keep away from them. You know why Cain had to wander over in the land of Nod? He could no longer stay with everybody else because he became divisive in his spirit because he refused to deal with the issues in his life. And he became a wanderer. Titus chapter 3, warn a divisive person once, warn them a second time, and then have nothing to do with them. Wow, this is some tough stuff. Not only does irresponsibility create conflict with someone else, but irresponsibility creates conflict within us. Adam and Eve, when they sinned, they went and they hid themselves. Uh-oh, conflict time. I didn't know you were naked. I didn't know you were naked. What are we going to do now? I don't know. Let's get some fig leaves. What are we supposed to do? They entered into a whole new realm that they had never been intended to experience, a whole new conflict within them. Here's a couple things. There's a weight of guilt that we carry with us into every other relationship and every other environment when I have unresolved conflict, when I'm irresponsible. And then we do the spin game, right? I may convince you. Everything's cool, man. Cool, man. But I can't convince myself. That's that conflict that is within us. Number 3, you never see people filled with joy after they blamed their way out of something. Where there's blame, there's often shame. We don't see Adam and Eve like jumping for joy. Yes! You don't see Cain after he blamed his way out of killing his brother, jumping for joy. He said, man, I'm so filled with joy that I blamed somebody else for my irresponsibility. I'm really filled with joy now. No, you never see an irresponsible person filled with joy. Principle number 4. There's something in all of us that wants to avoid responsibility in some area of our lives. Galatians 6:5 tells us that each of us will have to bear his own load. Have you ever noticed we all become trial lawyers when it comes to making the case that it's somebody else's fault? Yeah, we can become professional lawyers about this. I'll tell you what, this is why I did it, and we spin things. So here's what I want us to do this week. Listen for blame, right? Pay attention to your excuses. The external ones, the ones that we speak, all right? And the internal ones, the self-talk that we give ourselves to excuse our irresponsibility. And then in every conflict, ask, what part of what happened is my responsibility, and how do I take responsibility for what I'm responsible for? I've got 8 things that I want to give you that I couldn't fit in your notes that I think can help you to be more responsible. Okay, if you want to write them down somewhere, if you got room somewhere to write them, that's great. If not, just listen and maybe get something out of it. All right, number 1, understand that responsibility is earned. Ephesians chapter 2, and we love Ephesians chapter 2, 8 and 9, okay? Salvation is not earned. And as we look at that passage in Ephesians chapter 2, we understand that first part, and we love that first part. For by grace you have been saved through faith. It's not your own doing. It's a gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one could boast. Man, my sin got me in this mess, and I can't get out of it. There's only one way for me to get out of it. That's the grace of God. He gives me this gift. It's called salvation. But it doesn't end there. For we are His workmanship. What is the Lord trying to work in us, created in Christ Jesus, in His image? He's trying to create within us the responsibility that God has. We can become irresponsible when Christ is irresponsible to us. He says, I have this work for you. You're a workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared beforehand so that you could walk in them. The only way that you're going to do good works is that you are a person who takes responsibility for your actions and you follow through and you do what you're supposed to do. So number 1, understand that responsibility is earned. It's not given. Number 2, deal with issues that are on you. There's some things in life that come on you. And so don't shirk that responsibility on the issues that come on you. I have an autistic child. So God has given me that responsibility. I'm not to shirk that responsibility. And you say, well, Pastor, I got a high-maintenance wife. Yep, that's your responsibility. I got high-maintenance husband. That's your responsibility. You see, God places things upon us to teach us character. He's much more interested in the development of our character than he is the development of our comfort. But we love to be comfortable, right? I think the easiest thing for me is to bail out. Irresponsibility breeds irresponsibility. And if you don't care about yourself and the repercussions of your irresponsibility, why don't you think about your kids? Do you really want them to be irresponsible? To live that way? We're modeling to our kids every day how we act. Number 3, whatever's in front of you, take it on. Right? Don't ignore it. Whatever's in front of you, deal with it. Right? You got a mortgage payment that needs to be paid? Pay it. You got a bill that needs to be paid? Pay it. If it means skipping a meal to pay it, that's what a responsible person does. Yeah. Whatever's in front of you, deal with it. Because if you are constantly one that is kind of working your way out of stuff that you're supposed to take care of, that becomes a major habit in your life. Number 4, stop making excuses. Stop the blame game. In any situation, there are always factors that you can't control. Always. Irresponsible people will always shift the focus to that area. Number 5, start small. As with any other task, responsibility starts small. That's why Jesus said, if you are faithful in the little things, I will make you ruler over mighty things. If you're not faithful over little things, you will never be a ruler over mighty things. That's how God's economy works. We are responsible, so be responsible. Number 6, don't forget anything. You know, there's a difference between starting something and finishing something. Irresponsibility breeds a lot of starting things. New start. Responsibility brings it to completion. At the end of the life of Paul, he did not say, I want God to say of me, good start. Great start. Hey, good intention. Yeah, you had good intentions. There it was. I knew you intended. No. Well done. Well done. Completion. Yeah, I got more respect for a guy who gets a C in a class than a guy who drops a class. The guy who drops the class is putting within him that quitting. I'm going to drop out. I'm not going to finish it. No, finish it. So you got to see. Who cares? You finished it, right? It is finished. Number 7, learn from your mistakes. Those of you who go to Celebrate Recovery know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. In other words, I never learn from my mistakes. Making the most of a mistake brings about responsibility. Taking ownership and saying, you know what, I did make that mistake. I'm going to fess up to it. I'm confessing it. I'm repenting of it. I'm turning from it. I'm responsible for it. And you find that you will be empowered in those areas. Those areas of weakness also become areas of strength. And then number 8, view yourself as one who can make a difference. Make a big difference. Be one who creates stuff, okay? When you see something needs to be done, jump on it and do it, okay? Hey, I need to take care of this here. I messed up, and I'm going to jump on and take care of it. I'm not going to let it fester. I'm not going to let it grow. You know, the Spirit of God is living within us, and it is, as followers of Christ. One of the functions of the Holy Spirit is to convict us. I find it's easier to deal with smaller convictions instead of waiting to become enlarged convictions, where it starts to infect and impact other people, and then they got to come to me and deal with me because I've been irresponsible. So I'm going to say, okay, how can I make a positive difference? You know, when we think about response able. We're positioning ourselves so that God says, hey, you are a vessel of honor. I can use you. He bypasses those who are irresponsible. At one time, Daniel Webster was considered the greatest of all living Americans. You've heard, no doubt, of the Webster's Dictionary. He was an outstanding statesman, a lawyer, orator, and leader of men. One day, 25 national leaders attended a banquet to honor Daniel Webster. One of the men at the banquet asked Mr. Webster, "Sir, what is the greatest thought that has ever entered into your mind?" Without hesitation, Webster replied, "The greatest thought that has ever entered into my mind was the thought that I am responsible before God." And as he spoke, he wept, excused himself from the banquet, and went outside to get control of his emotions. When he returned, he talked for 30 minutes about man's responsibility to God. Wow. Here's the conclusion. You were created for responsibility. God always empowers you in those areas of responsibility. If He led you to do it, He leads you to finish it. Number 2, to shirk responsibility is to deny who God is and who He has made you to be. When I shirk my responsibility, I'm saying God is not sufficient in my life. Number 3, you will neither be happy nor fulfilled without being responsible. Number 4, irresponsibility always creates conflict with others and with myself. Number 5, so let's take responsibility for the things our Creator has made us responsible for and not worry about the things we are not responsible for. That's where a busybody comes in. They're worried about things that they're not responsible for. Meanwhile, the things they are responsible for are falling apart. Your life is too short to be a busybody. Number 6, let's ask, am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? Am I really taking responsibility for my life? Okay, my part's done. As we look at the whole subject of being response-able and avoiding the blame game, every one of us have areas, I think, that we struggle with, right? And for one person, one struggle is much different than what another person struggles with. But what we have a tendency to do is to gravitate toward those who have the same issues of irresponsibility that we have. And then we never get better in that area. I know you may find this strange to believe, but I used to be a cross-country runner. I'd run for miles. Matter of fact, to this day, when I go to the doctor, I said, "Man, you have an athlete's heart." This is because I ran, and 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 I ran. And when I didn't walk anywhere. I didn't walk to school, I ran to school. I didn't walk to work, I ran to work. Wherever I ran. And I found that I would excel when I would run with those who were faster than me and those who were able to finish the race ahead of me. It'd be nice to take comfort in the fact that I can hang around these guys that are slow-paced. And I could hang out there and shine among the losers. But then I began to lose my edge. And so I'd always move on ahead, take it to the next level. If my coach said, "Hey, I want you to run 10 today," I'd run 12. I said, "Man, we used to do this thing called telephone poles. We had this street called Reservoir Street that's a street like this, right? It's a quarter mile straight up. And how that works is you sprint one telephone pole, you jog to the next. You sprint the next until you get to the top. No. I'm not going to sprint one job. I'm sprinting the whole thing. Now, if I would do something like that to receive a little thing that is a corruptible award that I don't even know where it is now, all those little things that I want. You put them around your neck. Hey, cool, slap, high five. Yeah. I have no idea where they are. In one of the moves, they got lost. If I'm willing to give that kind of discipline, right, to that, how much more should I be in the area of responsibility for where I am spiritually? So what area in your life are you lacking responsibility? Maybe one, maybe two. I think every one of us have little areas of our lives that we are not able to respond to something that God has called us to do because we were irresponsible in our lives. Maybe it's financial. Maybe you've been irresponsible with your finances, and as a result, now you are jammed financially. Okay, so when are we going to fix that? Whenever you start taking responsibility for it. Maybe it is in this matter of serving the Lord, okay? Maybe you've been irresponsible in serving Him. Okay, so when are we going to fix that? Well, I guess, I come from a family of very responsible people, and we just have a hard time committing. Okay, keep playing the blame game, right? Or we can say, enough is enough. I'm laying that one at the altar, and I'm moving on, okay? The blame game gets you nowhere. So this morning, as you look at your life, I'm going to ask you all to stand to your feet, okay? And as you're standing to your feet, I want you to make a decision today. And that decision is that in one area of my life, I'm going to start taking responsibility for that one area. Just one area, or two, but not 10. That's too much, okay? One or two areas. I'm going to take responsibility. And I'm leaving this place different. And so I don't know what area that is for you. You don't need to tell me. That's your responsibility. But what I do want to do is I want to pray for you, okay? I want you to take that one area of responsibility that you know what it is, leave it at this altar. And so what I want you to do, I'm going to pray in just a second, but at the conclusion of this prayer, I want you to come up here and stand in front of this altar, and we're going to symbolically leave that area of responsibility here on the altar, okay? Then we're not going to pick it up. We're going to be responsible and leave it here, and then we're going to do the right thing this week. And so, Lord, as we have looked at this whole subject of being response-able, Lord, I ask that you forgive me, first of all, for those areas of my life, man, where I lacked faith, where I thought I could take control of something. Man, those are my two big areas right there, okay? So, Lord, I lay that on the altar this morning. And I said, Lord, I want to be able to respond to your Spirit. I want to have a clear line of communication with you so that I don't miss anything that you have for me. So at the end of my life, I don't have an incomplete. You can say of me, well done, thou good and faithful servant. So I pray for those who are going to come forward here in just a minute. Lord, some of them are going to be having trouble with courage. So give them the courage to come forward and just lay it out here on the altar. Symbolically lay it here at this altar and give them victory. In Jesus' name, amen.